Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald! Timber!
From inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal. From inside the centre. I can't believe that.
Good time of day. Well, everywhere, I guess. Probably mostly Australia, based on our audience figures. About 2/3 of ya. Welcome to episode 177 of Americans Watching the Footy. I am Benjamin Castle here in San Diego, and my brother Ethan is in Mecklenburg County.
That's right, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Home of the Knights. You see some baseball tonight?
No, got rained out. So it means I'm going to go see the Charlotte Knights play tomorrow, and then I think I'm going to skip the Hickory Crawdads so that I can do Asheville again.
Is Asheville just like an actually awesome destination?
Yes, it is.
If Australians have heard of Asheville, either they know somebody from there or they have followed the NCAA tournament before, because sometimes UNC Asheville makes it in as a conference champion. They didn't this past year, didn't they?
No, they did the year before, though. I saw them play. They were in Sacramento, lost to UCLA.
Oh, okay. So this is our round 13 preview, as I said. Pretty full round, almost full. No overlaps, but 8 games because of the King's birthday holiday. So we got 1 Thursday, 1 Friday, 3 Saturday, 2 Sunday, including Sunday night footy, and the traditional Monday King's birthday fixture too. I love Sunday night footy. I love seeing this stuff be scheduled around holidays. Let's have more of it. I hope the Sunday night Q clash around the Labor Day holiday in Queensland becomes a fixture, for example. And just more compelling round enders in general. Make that Sunday 4:40 slot desirable. And that really can be Sunday night around this time of year as winter starts to set in Australia. But we're starting with Thursday, of course. Is this our last Thursday until finals?
Yeah, it's kind of funny that we have no Thursday games in the second half of the season, really. I mean, I guess technically this is the second half of the season. What game would officially be? Because whatever would be halftime of game 104. What would be game 104?
That was this past week.
Oh, which game was it?
I think it was Richmond and Geelong.
Yeah, we're up to 106. Yeah, halftime of Richmond and Geelong was the halfway point.
So I think you'd like how Geelong started the second half. You could also make an argument counting finals that we're going to reach the halfway point within this round, because it'll be at the end of the Friday nighter that will reach 108 games. And counting finals, we'll have 216 this year.
All right. Game number 107 is Adelaide hosting Richmond at the Adelaide Oval, June 6th for almost the entire world.
Not Hawaii.
I know, we've had this discussion. 7 p.m. local time bounce, 7:30 in Victoria and the other eastern states, 5:30 a.m. where I'll be here in the eastern time zone, and 2:30 a.m. on the west coast. This is a Fox Soccer Plus game.
I think you're going to like Sunrise Footy, and I think you'll understand why our friend Craig from A Yank on the Footy appreciates it so much.
Still, with the scheduling of my day, having done East Coast footy before, I prefer Pacific time footy. But 14th place Crows, they're at 4-7-1, and I think they're in deep shit after the loss to Hawthorn. The Tigers are in 17th. They're 1-11, but the last couple weeks they've been competitive.
And they could definitely get a boost looking at the potential ins for them this week. Shea Bolton, Dion Prestia, and perhaps most importantly, yes, more importantly than Bolton, not for the entertainment factor, but pure watchability and just general cleanliness, Tim Taranto. He broke his wrist in training ahead of round 5 and has been sorely missed alongside former Giant collaborator Jacob Hopper. But none of those will fill the hole left by one Michael Lafau.
This is the injury I am most disappointed about in all of the AFL right now. Not only was he an awesome story, not only was he one that you picked out early on,
This was another preseason find for me. I think it was it Anthony Caminiti last year that I found in the preseason? I think so.
It's especially frustrating because no matter how you feel about Richmond, even if you hate them, this team has dealt with so much that, like, they were allowed to have one nice thing, and now they don't have that one nice thing.
It's their 5th ACL of the season.
Before we started recording, you were giving me the all-injured team.
It didn't include any Tigers.
But you could have an all ACL team, I think. There might be enough of a team to fill a whole ACL roster at this point. Maybe have a couple guys play out of position, but I think you can get there.
Speaking of playing out of position, what would it require really to fill the hole that Lafau leaves? Noah Balta is so important to their defensive outlook that I think you'd have to keep him there, even though the most compelling thing to do would be to throw him forward.
I think you got to keep him back. Maybe to throw in Jacob Kashitsky again.
I think Kashitsky might have to be the answer, unless you give one of the midseason draftees a lifeline super quickly. I guess that would be Camel Gray.
Who's the one? I know there's like one guy left, has been available for them and has been healthy that hasn't been picked for a game of their like guys that were there at the start of the year. Who is that one?
Are you talking about the guy that Leo talks up, the guy who hasn't even played a VFL game, Oliver Hayes Brown?
Is he the only one?
It's not a pretty situation for the Tigers.
That said, last 2 weeks they've played much more competitively, and I will feel a lot better about Geelong's performance against them if they go out and give Adelaide a tough game.
I'm trying to remember now who all the injured players are for Richmond. It's gotten to the point that they've given out 51-52 to the midseason draftees. What?
Let's go. More high numbers. That needs to be more like Italian soccer, which is, like Serie A is pretty fucked, but just in terms of having dudes just with the liberty to wear whatever the hell number they want.
They have numbers 6, 8, and 9 free.
Well, I don't think they're giving out 9 for a while.
True.
Or 8.
And they have 16 free.
Okay, but I don't think 9 or 8 are being given out for a while.
I guess that there's going to be more of an onus on Samson Ryan as a forward option, which I don't mind. I don't mind him getting more opportunities. Did all right for himself this past week.
Probably more Seth Campbell, too. I like him.
Well, Campbell's more mid-sized, more of an outside type forward, young Tasmanian there that I want to see keep getting time.
Adelaide, I think they're already done for. Now they lost Matt Crouch for the season to an AC joint injury. I just thought they had to beat the Hawks and they didn't. Their schedule gets really tough after this. Billy Dowling's debut has been confirmed. He's going to be in the midfield. He's pick number 43 in the 2022 draft. Sounds like Taylor Walker is somewhere towards probable, coming off of his back injury. And then in the Sandfold, Daniel Curtin was more active downfield, and Nick Murray returned and played pretty well. That would be significant. Why is he listed as N. Murray? Is there another Murray?
Yeah, his brother. Toby was drafted in the midseason draft, basically a Sandfold elevation for him. They played together in the twos on Saturday, and both went well. Nick had 4 contested marks, and Toby had 2 goals. I believe they still lost to Westies, though. How much can you recall about these teams meeting last year in round 2?
I remember the Crows being disappointing.
Well, they went on this huge run, scoring 8 of the first 9 goals in the second half to get within a point, but Richmond closed it out by scoring the last 5, and then also just they demolished off turnovers before that. The thing I remember about this game is Patrick Parnell getting lit up and slung by Nathan Broad, who was suspended for 4 games for that. Parnell's just a fun, small defender to watch, and he's had a rough run with injuries and collisions.
It was a Saturday afternoon game. I thought it was a night game.
I think maybe the last time the Crows won might have been a night game, but this is a meeting that has regularly been in Adelaide as of late. They haven't met at the G since 2018.
Okay, we got to make like a list of, all the ones that we've been waiting on since, we're going to lose the one that was kind of our whole identity with that.
That's a good off-season project for us to go through, like the weirdest of those.
The best part of this and of all of these is there's really no reason to it.
There's no reason for unbalanced travel. Obviously, mileage will be greater for the Western teams, but in terms of like actually visiting teams away,
yes, should be like every
use for that.
Within every 3 years at minimum.
Crows are 33.5 point favorites. and we may have a chance to do some Mad Libs.
You know how we said last week was the final Mad Libs? We lied.
The timing worked out because we're night owls enough, and now we've got more Mad Libs. So, Ethan, you are the one who's going to fill in these Mad Libs. So, I need a past tense verb to start with, please.
Eradicated.
Kind of on the nose.
Damn, that's unfortunate.
I need an occupation.
Haberdasher.
Very nice. One of my favorite words. And a noun.
Chimney.
An animal, please.
Boll weevil.
Are we inspired by the University of Arkansas Monticello?
Yes.
Good. Very good. A gerund or a verb ending in ing.
Chafing.
Next up, a body part.
Nipple. Too easy.
We actually hadn't used that, holy cow. Adjective.
Kafkaesque.
Have you been sitting on that one?
Nope.
And now a location.
Bouvet.
The island?
What other bouvet?
Good question. Past tense verb now.
Glued.
And a present tense verb.
Dangling.
I'll go for dangle then. An occupation, please.
Massage therapist.
2 nouns now.
Inanimate carbon rod.
This inanimate carbon rod.
And filament.
Now I need a number.
346.2.
Any reason?
Nope.
May I please have an adjective?
Grotesque.
Always a good one. A present tense verb.
Harden.
And finally, a body part.
Toenail. All right. So now I have to guess the actual changes. I saw the mobile app notifications. The Tigers have 4 changes. I mean, a couple of those were necessitated. And I saw something about a ruck being axed, which I can only assume is Riley O'Brien out and Kieran Strawn coming in, which surprises me.
O'Brien's definitely been down and has had lower quality possessions.
It's funny because, he was considered one of the only players that was doing anything positive during a lot of the game against the Hawks. Although I think we gave our polished turd to James Borlace.
He actually got a coach's
I guess
vote.
making Ned Reeves look decent probably wasn't a great indictment, but yeah, still surprised. And we know that Billy Dowling's debuting, so it's got to be at least 2 Crows changes. Strawn for O'Brien and Dowling for Crouch. Are those the only 2 changes?
Oh, those aren't the only changes, but Dowling for Crouch seems like the call they'd make, kind of why he's coming in. Those are not the only changes.
Taylor Walker back in?
Well, he would be staying in because he was subbed out, and the answer is no.
Taylor Walker out.
The back injury is too much for him for this week.
So who comes in? Elliot Himmelberg back?
No Elliot.
Lockie Gallant?
I don't really see actually a true forward replacement for him as a thing.
I have no clue then. Will Hamill?
Hamill is one of the ins, yes.
Is there a 4th?
There is a 4th, because there's one more injury.
Sam Barry? I don't know.
Now, Barry's fine. It's Braden Cook.
Oh, I think I did know something about that. And who's the other in? Is it Turkey?
Curtin stays out.
Okay, who's the other in?
It's a guy who I think of as a sub a lot.
Ned McHenry?
McHenry is the one.
Okay, so it's McHenry, Dowling, Strawn, and Hamill in for Cook, Walker, O'Brien, and Crouch. Should I continue? And Richmond, we know there are 4. We know that Dusty's out with an illness, which I assume is just a case of I need to play my milestone game at home-itis. We know they're getting Dion Prestia back. We know they're getting Shea Bolton back. We think they're getting Tim Taranto back. Is the other one Jacob Koshitsky in?
Yeah, you're correct on all 4 Richmond ins, as well as Dusty being out and one other out, obviously.
Well, we know that Lafau is out, which sucks. Are there any other injuries?
There is one more injury. I think this had to do with the substitution this past week.
Marlon Pickett.
Yeah, his calf is still not right.
And then the 4th, I'm just going to go with Caleb Smith,
who debuted as a sub and will not get a full game yet. So much less interesting there for Richmond.
What is interesting is what us 2 mad lads concoct.
Right, because I wouldn't quite call us Mad Libs. We are very used to Mad Libs, though, in Northern California.
Sorry, when I think of the mad lad, all I can think of now is that meme. So I told Dean to lay down on the floor. He actually did it, the absolute madman.
So here we go with our maybe last bad lib of the home and away season. We don't know now.
I would think so, just because it's our last Thursday game, but
Stranger things have happened. Adelaide has eradicated ruckman Riley O'Brien for Thursday night's match against Richmond, while the Tigers have recalled haberdasher Jacob Kazitsky and welcomed back 3 stars from the chimney. O'Brien is one of 4 outs for the Boll Weevils, with veteran forward Taylor Walker also chafing due to a back injury, while Matt Crouch, shoulder, and wingman Braden Cook, nipple, are also injured. The club is Kafkaesque. Both Walker and Cook will be fit to play Beauvais next week. In good news for the home side, skipper Jordan Dawson has glued a foot issue and has been named to dangle the Tigers. Massage therapist Kieran Strawn has been recalled for his first senior
Inanimate carbon rod.
in more than 2 years, while the Crows have also named Ned McHenry and Will Hamill alongside Filament Billy Dowling. The Tigers have named Kazitsky for just his 346.2th senior game of the season, replacing the injured Kelty Lafau up forward, while grotesque trio Shea Bolton, Tim Taranto, and Dion Prestia all harden. Dustin Martin has been managed ahead of his 300th game next week, while Marlon Pickett, Toenail, and youngster Caleb Smith are out. So maybe that was our last Mad Libs of the home and away season, probably because we're losing Thursdays, but at this point, who knows? Hopefully we'll have a sub for finals, at least for finals week 1. One can hope.
Friday night, there are 2 constants right now with the Western Bulldog. One is that they're playing a bunch of games at Marvel, and the other is that they're playing a lot of Thursday and Friday nights.
That's just a Bulldogs thing, and it's rearing its head again this year. This matchup against the Brisbane Lions was a Thursday nighter last year in round 3. That was an 11-point Bulldogs win, where it was just Bond and Trelaw dominating at clearance, which has been their MO as of late as well.
They were 0-2 entering that game, so it was a must win.
And one of your favorite people emerged in that game,
Arthur Jones,
who we have yet to see at AFL level this year. I mean, I'm fine with them giving the opportunities to Charlie Clark.
You know, I've had a lot of list complaints with the Dogs this year. Not playing Arthur Jones has not been one of them, because I've seen some guys that need to be in there that, you know, there hasn't been a spot for them.
Well, this past week, Artie Jones kicked 2-1 from 18, so maybe he'll find a way to crack things sooner rather than later. One can hope. This will be your typical 7:40 local time, so 5:40 a.m. Eastern, 2:40 Pacific for Americans on Fox Sports 2. This is 11th versus 13th. The Lions having lost to Hawthorn before the bye. This is a head-to-head that tilts heavily in favor of the home team. They've won 18 of the past 22 meetings since 2009's finals.
I have spent a lot of time being critical of Bulldogs, saying that they've needed to panic, but ladder-wise, I think it's pretty obvious that this game is a lot more important for the Lions. We're going to have some changes for the Dogs this week for sure. Well,
some of them positive, finally.
Positive being Tom Liberatore likely back, and Ed Richards, both coming off of concussions. Remember, for the 2.5 games before Richards got concussed, he was unbelievable. He was not just their best player, he was one of the most important players in the entire league. And Libba, you know, he's just kind of the clearance god.
So how do you manage Richards' minutes in the middle now that you have Libba in as well? This could almost be too much of a good thing with how well Trelaw has gone, too.
I have no answer to this. I just literally don't know.
Well, I think we have a legitimate question here. How will Luke Beveridge fuck it up?
Don't fuck it up.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was leaning to, unfortunately. There will be no Sam Darcy this week. He accepted his 2-game suspension for a high bump of Braden Manor.
The club did. Riley West, however, got off. His 1-game suspension for a high bump of Jeremy Howe was overturned, so he will not be the first player to be suspended twice this year.
That suspension. I was like, wait, that's suspendable? So they got that one right.
Not sure what other changes would be made for the Bulldogs, if any, because the defense went well this past week. We had our questions about Alex Keith, but he showed a reason to stay in. It was also helpful for some pressure further upfield as well.
I think Lockie Bramble's been a weak link.
Has he played every game this year? He has.
Yeah, what I would do is I would take him out and maybe find a way to have Caleb Daniel do more of kind of taking the ball out of the back.
And who would you bring in Bramble's place?
As if this team doesn't have enough talls, Buku Kamas.
Well, they'll be without one of those talls this week, at least in the forward part of the ground. But yes, the answer is Buku. And not just because he's a friend of the show. The Lions will be getting Eric Hipwood back after he served his suspension before the bye for his dangerous tackler Nick Flostone. They'll also be getting Brandon Starcevich back. He injured his calf in the warm-up after running out before Q Clash, and that was what started the whole Logan Morse saga,
which was awesome.
Brandon Ryan is the easy out for Hipwood. There are some options there when it comes to the Lions because Bruce Reville was one of the people that came in. Noah Answorth and Harry Sharp haven't been super impressive either, and you've got some options there in the reserves, so you want to make more changes too. I would think Jimmy Tunstall would be one to include, or maybe Jared Lyons doing more of an outside job. So maybe very well more than just the injury changes for Brisbane because, well, they got a lot to fix and quickly. They did lock away Hugh McCluggage, though, for 7 more years. He was one of the big potential free agents for this season, and he is now off the market.
Bulldogs favored by 9.5 seems a little high. I mean, I feel like they could totally win this game by like 2 goals, but I don't know. This seems a little high.
They are the more impactful ends, I'll say that. It's a matter of getting the right midfield balance, managing Lima and Richards' time, managing just that whole midfield group. I could totally see him doing just some sort of sickos thing, like sending Adam Treloar. No, it would be Jack McRae. Sending Jack McRae to full forward again to make room.
Ooh, shit. Yeah, I think that might actually happen.
He's even sent Bont there at times. But no, I feel like McRae would be the victim again.
Interesting scheduling thing going on.
That being?
The Hawks are playing a 3rd straight home game this coming week, and it will be their 3rd straight game at a different venue because they had a home game at Marvel, they had a home game at the G, and now they're going to be playing one down in Tasmania. Hawthorn hosting GWS to kick off a pretty interesting Saturday slate. Typical start time, 1:45 p.m. locally, 11:45 p.m. in the Eastern time zone of the U.S., 8:45 p.m. on the West Coast, Fox Soccer Plus.
This is the Hawks' first head-to-head home game against the Giants, though, since 2019, and there have been 6 meetings in between, and the Giants have fared well in recent years as well. They've won 4 of 5 meetings since 2020, so make of all that as you will. The most recent meeting was at the Sydney Showground, which was a 13-point Giants win. It was one of Stephen Canelio's everywhere games. Sam Taylor was also everywhere in defense, and Taylor now has the joint longest contract in the AFL because he was extended for 7 years through 2032. This is a huge get. It's awesome seeing the Giants be able to get these long deals, especially for out-of-area players like Taylor, who's from Western Australia. So well done, Jason McCartney.
If you are not a fan of the Orange team, you should be very afraid because this is a team whose ability to identify talent has always been awesome. And now if they're also going to be able to keep guys, this could be a major powerhouse for a while.
I believe their football manager, McCartney, I think he might have been in charge of the Bulldogs during their years leading up to it, including their flag. So he's got premiership winning experience. Finn Callahan was also awesome in that round 17 game. You know how much of a Finn Callahan endorser I am, and it was one of his best games in defense, especially his groundwork there, leading to a lot of ground ball gets and scores off those. But the more memorable meeting last year was in the at Norwood.
I want to say it was an FS1 game. I know it was on American TV, and I remember explaining to somebody, like, yeah, Harry Himmelberg basically caught the go-ahead touchdown and made game-saving interception within like a minute of each other, except it was like a 1/10 of a mile apart.
You obsessed over the 1/10 of a mile apart.
Yes, I did, and I will. Do you have a problem with that?
I mean, that's just Harry Hillenberg at his between 50 swingman best. We've seen much less of that really ever since then. He's been locked into a defensive 50 role, and he hasn't been nearly as prominent or just important. And when they have trouble starting the tsunami without Lockie Whitfield, it makes me think Himmelberg needs to be more involved in those initial chains. That meeting was also Aaron Cadman's debut for the Giants. He had a goal for that. And Seamus Mitchell debuted for the Hawks.
Two pretty informed teams heading into this one. A couple of injury things for the Hawks. Lloyd Meek is questionable, missed last week with an ankle injury. Ned Reeves did well in his place, but I think Kieran Briggs is a pretty tough challenge, and you'd much rather have Meek if available. And then down on the twos, Nick Watson and Chad Wingard each had 4 goals. Max Ramsden played well in the ruck. Wingard's going to get work back in at some point in the next couple of weeks, I would have to think.
You'd have to think both Watson and Wingard aren't far away from returning. I'm also interested in Finn McGuinness as a potential in. It will be very clear with Canelio and Kelly out that the attention would go to Tom Green, and McGuinness had 39 touches this past week. So yeah, Canelio, he's going to be out 3 to 5 weeks off the shoulder injury he suffered against Geelong. Callan Ward is the likely replacement there, but I'd say at this point in Ward's career, that's a step down.
Canelio hadn't played all that well until he got hurt, so I think they can survive. Harry Perryman going down for 2 to 3 weeks with a hamstring injury, I think that's pretty significant, especially when you're already missing Jack Buckley, Isaac Cumming, and Josh Kelly. Good news, you do get Callum Brown back. Don't even fucking think about putting him in defense with Perryman out. This team, I think they're now at a point where they have enough ball movers out that there could be a little concern.
I think maybe you'll have a steadier back job for Finn Callahan then. That's an option. Maybe you could do some magnet moving to bring Jimmy Peatling further back as well. When Sam Taylor went out and Nick Dal Santo said in round 5 against the Saints out of the ACT, hey, maybe Callum Brown goes back, and ended up being Peatling, who ended up taking the game-winning mark.
I think Nick Haynes could also drop back a bit. You could just see more of Lockie Whitfield. Lockie Whitfield could have a lot of fantasy value. I mean, he already does, but I think in this game, he'll be extremely valuable.
Maybe if they include McGuinness, they have him try to replicate the James Jordan job on Whitfield, actually. That's an option. But if you're looking for some younger options to replace Harry Perryman, Josh Fahey and Cooper Hamilton would be the ones. Cooper Hamilton, of course, the media darling. And Josh Fahey, who I remember being in long sleeves and kicking a super important goal against the Crows in Adelaide last year. Now, those two have both spent more time at center half forward as of late, but are capable of sliding back.
Giants are favored by 7.5. Is that a little high with the outs and with how the Hawks are playing, or is that appropriate?
I would have put this at GWS 3.5.
That's exactly what I was about to say. The Giants have never won an away game against Hawthorn. They have never beaten them at the MCG or in Tasmania, though they have had a draw there. These teams also play round 21 at Manuka Oval. I assume the Giants will wear, the charcoal for this game or something, or black maybe? I don't think they wear orange.
I really enjoy the charcoal jumper, and I hope they wear it. I think it depends on whether or not Hawthorn brings out the brown jumper, though.
Well, this is a Hawthorn home game, so that's why I think Hawthorn will wear the regular old stripes.
They could do something strange. Not sure how keen they are on wearing like specialty jerseys in Tasmania, but maybe once a year. I'm looking forward just to the thought of Tasmania's team hosting Hawthorn for those first few meetings starting in 2028. That's got to be a double up along with North.
That could be a fun crowd.
Yeah, and obviously you would have that in Launceston and have Norths at Hobart.
Would you? I mean, I think you could flip them around, actually, and just kind of see what happens.
Not for the first one. I think, honestly, that might be a great option for the Devils' first game, hosting Hawthorn in Launceston, especially if Hawthorn is as good as we think they could end up being in 4 years' time. Speaking of North, though, maybe this rebuild will amount to something. I think they got a decent shot to win out west this week against the Eagles. 4:35 Eastern, 2:35 Western for Australians. For Americans, 2:35 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning, 11:35 p.m. Pacific Friday night on Fox Soccer Plus. 16th versus 18th. this meeting is what it is.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
And it's lost a lot of its luster, obviously, with Harley Reid's 2-game suspension upheld for that sling tackle of Darcy Wilson.
On one hand, yes, because we lose that narrative of Harley playing against the team that could have had it. On the other hand, I think it might make the game more competitive and give North more of a chance of a win.
I might straight up tip North because Harley's out.
Oh, I'm not going that far. It's also the Eagles at home still.
If one of Jake Waterman or Tim Kelly is out, and it looks like Kelly might be with his hip injury, then yeah, I'd be pretty quick to say I'm okay with tipping North.
Now, I'd still take the Eagles. Remember, this is a team that came close to beating a not great, but still competent-ish Saints team.
And played Essendon tough, I know.
No, but I'm just saying, like, without some of the guys this past week, that's more relevant than the Essendon game.
I would hope that this is the time where Jai Cully finally comes back in. He's yet to play in the AFL this year. It's a contract year for him. I wanted to stick around. I know you would just want him to join another dreadlocked man wearing hoops, so you probably don't want to see him.
My biggest complaint with Harley not playing this game, it would have been way more fun to give like Nick Larkey a standing ovation every time he has the ball with Harley there, but I think still cheer for Nick Larkey.
Speaking of Larkey, this was floated, I think, on the North website that he could get some tall support in the form of one of their midseason additions right away, that being former Port Ruckman Bryn Teagle, who was picked up off Collingwood's VFL list.
How do you incorporate him with Tristan Jerry?
He would just be your secondary ruck option as well as a resting forward otherwise.
I just don't think that's necessary. But if you think he'll get some opportunities because Larkey, I mean, why not give it a try? It's not like anything else has worked.
It's more about Larkey getting more opportunities because of another tall occupying other defenders, I guess. This could kind of be symbiotic. If not, Cully, by the way, for the Eagles, maybe Clay Hall, who also had 30 disposals this past week in the Waffle Eagles' narrow win over Perth. Now, I don't think that's anything like to be super celebratory about because Perth are dead last, and the Eagles might have 3 wins, but they're just above 60% in the Waffle.
North could be getting Hugh Greenwood and Jai Simpkin back this week. Now, I don't know if Greenwood merits inclusion in the team. Frankly, I don't know if Simpkin does either. He had played very poorly before hurting his quad. Callan Dawson, who I really like early on this year, rehabbing before the bye. A combination of Dawson and Charlie Coleman in the back could be pretty fun. And then it looks like Griffin Lowe could start VFL rehab within 2 weeks, which could give this team another outside weapon. And then you move guys like Sheasel to play the inside more.
Or you just stick him at halfback and be super boring.
I mean, it would still work. These teams played twice last year and will play twice again this year. They'll be playing down in Tasmania round 22. In round 1 last year, North hung on to win by 5. Harry Sheasel was named Rising Star, 34 disposals in his debut.
That was the game where I wondered, what does Bailey J. Williams even do? And I even made the DJ Khaled meme based off it because he was just nonsensical as to how he played.
Now, I don't think I would put him in the upper half of Ruckman.
Especially because he may not be a Ruckman much longer.
Because of Matt Flynn?
Yes, because of Matt Flynn.
I would probably put him in the lower tier of AFL Rucks, but he has proven himself AFL worthy since then. The Eagles won in round 20, handing North a 17th consecutive loss. At the time, we thought, now the Eagles lose Harley Reid. They played good first and third quarters. They played bad second and fourths. Was it Anthony Hudson doing that game? Or was it Adam Papalia who had like a really awesome call at the final siren? Might have been Papalia. Probably was because game was in Perth.
I'm thinking it was Paps. I know the call that you're talking about. I'm going to go back to our notes because I definitely wrote that down.
Write that down, write that down!
He said, ecstasy for the Eagles, agony for North Melbourne, a streak is dead, and a streak lives on.
Okay, now say it like the Reddit text-to-speech voice on those stupid Ask Reddit YouTube videos.
Ecstasy for the Eagles, agony for North Melbourne, a streak is dead, and a streak lives on.
Now do it as Kermit.
Are you sure about this one?
Yes.
Ecstasy for the Eagles, agony for North Melbourne, a streak is dead, yay! And a streak lives on.
Awesome work.
The Eagles are 19.5-point favorites. I want to see what the lists look like here. If Greenwood and Simpkin are back, and Dawson as well, I could see this line be adjusted. I'd put it within 2 goals.
If Waterman or Kelly play, I would put this line out higher. It's a shame Oscar Allen isn't healthy, because it would have been really cool to see him go up against Charlie Comben. You know, 2 guys that would be a logical matchup for each other, and both that have served as like reasons for optimism on teams without much.
Guys for whom Ethan would personally run through a wall.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
Don't forget, we are, of course, on Twitter at Americans Footy. We're also on YouTube and Instagram and stuff. I'm on Twitter at Castle Media. My son, Brian Harambe, is on Instagram at CatNameBrian.
And I am on Twitter at BenjaminHK01. Maybe I'll show more updates of what life is like in that city discovered by the Germans in 1904. Saturday night, we hope, will be King Clash 3 between the Saints and Suns over at Marvel.
We want it to be alliterative, don't we? So what about King Kerfuffle?
King Kerfuffle, there we go.
You're welcome.
I was thinking about just spelling Clash weirdly.
Yeah, my way's better.
Yeah, it is. King Kerfuffle 3.
It is
So they've matched up twice before in 2020 and 2021, both on the Gold Coast, and both Saints wins. So Ben is looking for his first win over Max still, and Max has to get over a potential knee issue this week.
I'm sorry, say that properly.
Max King has to get over a knee issue this week. There was no structural damage, there was no ligament damage, but he's still considered a test.
Now, this is a weird game for a Saturday night. It's not like either team is, usually a big TV draw. It's not like, other than the possible King Brothers matchup, there's a huge storyline for this game. But I kind of like it just because it's something different. So I guess the 7 team will get a matchup they don't usually get. Is this a 7 game?
I would think so, and they did get the Suns a couple weeks ago in Dark.
And the Saints did have that game at Port, but nonetheless.
I believe also the Saints-Tigers game during the at Norwood was a 7 game too. Still, though, less common teams to put in prime time.
And yeah, it is a 7 game.
7:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 Pacific for Americans on Fox Soccer Plus. The 15th place Saints and the 8th place Suns, who are 7-0 at home.
And this game's on the road. This is a really important game for both teams for 2 different reasons. The Saints, I've been hanging on to not writing them off simply because they always defy my logic. If they lose this one, I think at 4-9, they would be pretty much done. Whereas the Suns, at some point, they need to prove they can win an actual away game, and this is a pretty good chance to do it.
And they are 2.5-point favorites.
I think that's appropriate, all things considered. These teams doubled up last year. They played at Marvel in round 4. Jack Higgins kicked 5-1 in a 53-point Saints win where they kicked 17 goals, which doesn't seem like it should be allowed. Seems very anti-Ross ball. And then round 18 at what was then Heritage Bank Stadium, the Suns snapped an 8-game head-to-head losing streak to the Saints with a 26-point win. Now, was Stuart Dew still there at that point, or was he gone by then?
That actually might have been Stephen King's first game. Speaking of Stuart Dew, he actually is now in a part-time role with the Brisbane Lions. And yes, I do remember Stephen King getting off to a winning start against the Saints. It's kind of coming back to me. And where is he now?
Geelong.
Back where he belongs.
So Max King, you listed that he has a Jared knee.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Jared can be spelled with 2 R's, like Jared Kalanick.
Ah, good point, yes.
So yes, he has a Jared Neale.
But no damage showed up on any scans. I'm more interested in who they might bring back from the twos, because Brad Crouch, Matthias Filippo, and Cooper Sharman all made their cases. Sandringham won by a single point at Frankston this past week. They were the only reserves team that got a win against a standalone side. Standalones were 3-1 against reserves, because Coburg beat Casey, Werribee won at Gold Coast, and the Bowlans defeated the Blues. Carlton are last.
That's where the impact of Carlton's injuries hit more.
In the twos rather than the ones. Yeah, I mean, you've seen it from Collingwood as well.
With the Suns, Jared Witz is still going to be out with his hamstring injury. Lloyd Johnston, whatever illness he's getting over, he's still questionable. Malcolm Roses played in the twos last week, so if he's not back this week, I would think in the next week or their next game. I forget if they're a round 14 or 15 bye.
They are around 14 bye.
Also, Levi Casbolt, 4 goals, so if you wanted to drop Jet Walter, he would be your guy. It looks like Jake Rogers and Brandon Ellis played well, but I don't think there are too many changes here other than necessary ones, considering they're coming off a pretty good win.
Rogers was a Rising Star nominee from earlier this year. I believe that came against the Eagles.
I'm not looking forward to this. So, there are only actually 3 Fox Footy games this week. Because of the holiday, all the rest are on 7. This is the last of the Fox Footy games. Sydney hosting Geelong at the SCG. I'd rather talk about last year's meetings than talk about this one. This will be Sunday afternoon, 3:20 p.m. locally, 1:20 a.m. on the East Coast. I'll be in Central Time, so it'll be 12:20 a.m. for me.
Because you will be where exactly?
Huntsville, Alabama.
The most populous city in the state now, actually. Rocket City. You'll be seeing the Trash Pandas.
Sure will.
One of the greatest names in organized sports, the Rocket City Trash Pandas. What level are they?
AA.
And affiliated with?
The Angels.
Ah, that makes sense. It's the 10-1 ladder-leading Swans coming off their bye against the 8-4 third-place Cats. They do not feel like a third-place team. I'm sorry.
I'm not complaining, but yeah, it really doesn't feel like it. I mean, look, 2nd through 12th or 13th, there's so much parity. Just the Swans are above everyone. I don't have much hope for this game. The hope would be either they kick as poorly as they did last year, they continue to shit their pants when they see us. That seems unlikely. Or just play a stinker coming out of the bye and they just don't end up going undefeated at home.
So talking about last year.
Yeah, this was fun. Round 6, we finally got our first home game, really after playing a couple of, so-called home games at the G. And we beat them even worse than we did in the grand final after the flag celebration. Beat them by 93 after beating them by 81 in the grand final. 5 goals apiece for Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins, and Sam Simpson playing his first game since 2021, kicking 2 goals. He was a fun little story at times last year that in what was otherwise a largely crap season.
And I think he was delisted.
I believe so. I mean, it really just came down to there wasn't really a spot for him. Not that he had done anything necessarily wrong.
Well, Mitch Hardy hasn't done anything wrong, and yet he's yet to get his debut.
Yep. Round 16, one of the funnier draws I've ever seen. We had no business being in that game. Sydney 6-18-54, Geelong 7-12-54. They had some really easy chances. I forget if it was Tom Papley kicking one off the post from point blank range.
Isaac Heaney hit the behind post twice.
I love the draw song. That time, I sang it with about 75% enthusiasm because I was happy we got 2 points, but also it was more just like relief because we felt like we should have lost that game 1,000 times.
Maybe Collingwood fans know how you feel now.
I'll never sing it with 100% enthusiasm unless we really pull one out of our asses.
Like a goal at the siren for a draw?
Something like that, or at least like the Tom Lynch one in the opener last season.
Yeah, that was late, but not a siren goal. What was the last time we had a siren draw with a goal?
2017. Mitch McGovern for Adelaide against Collingwood. There was also a behind to draw Tom Hawkins against the Giants in round 15 in 2017.
Oh, I remember seeing footage of that one. It was a shot that Hawkins should have hit for the win. And 2017, I believe, was the year the Giants had consecutive draws. So this must have been one of those. It was the first of those. Yeah, so the Giants then drew the next week against Hawthorn. We mentioned that earlier in this show as well. That was the first time any team had had consecutive draws in the VFL or AFL since 1921.
19-dickety-1?
Ah, right, the Kaiser stole our word for dickety.
No, he stole the word for 20.
I like my way better.
I don't.
Only good news on the injury front for the Swans, with Tom McCartan being cleared to return after being concussed in round 8. They took things slow with him for pretty obvious reason, given his and his brother's history. Aaron Francis is the obvious out there. Otherwise, it's just a question of who's the sub, I guess. I've liked what Matt Roberts has done, getting more responsibility at halfback, but it's been him or Braden Campbell. It'll probably be one of them again. The only other news on the Swans, Will Hayward has signed a 5-year extension, so that's a big free agent target locked up. So the Crows fail again. The Blues swing and miss as well. At some point, the Crows are going to get somebody in free agency. It'll probably just be like Mitch Hardy, because he probably won't get a game for the Cats at this point.
Yep, I think especially he didn't get one last week. Jai Clark and Mark Blitzovs are both back from their suspensions. I think Blitzovs is obviously in. Clark, I'm not so sure. Sounds like Patrick Dangerfield might be available coming off that hamstring injury, but I think the way they've handled him and with how valuable he is, you only play him if you're sure he's at 100%. If there's even the slightest doubt, you do not play him. See if Ollie Henry's a go. If not, that's probably just Gary Rowan's spot.
I like the idea of Gary Rowan playing again in Sydney. That always gets people going.
I would think O'Sheen Mullen comes out, and then, I don't know, maybe Mark O'Connor, maybe he stays in. I would still like to see Brandon Parfit get back in after the clearances he racked up this past week. Ted Close, he's also an option. I like him. If he can even be half the player his brother is, I'm all in. Maybe this is a week you go with Reece Stanley. You know, I've been more down on Reece Stanley than pretty much anybody, but also I think this is actually a pretty opportune matchup for him because I think his mobility favors him more against Brody Grundy. Big picture, I obviously would rather see Toby Conway. I'd rather just Mark Blitzovs be the main guy here to get Grundy. It would be really funny after all the weeks of screaming for Mitch Hardy and then now being resigned to the fate that he's not going to get a game, that he gets in now. That would be really funny, but I think it's highly unlikely.
The Swans are 19.5-point favorites. I'd be quicker to say 29.5.
I'd keep this around here. I see them winning by a little under 4 goals. I mean, 90% chance they win, but I don't think it's going to be that much of a blowout. It is worth noting, Zach Tuohy was pretty quiet last week, except for the fourth quarter, so maybe you take him out. Jake Kolajashny and Tom Stewart both finished last week's game on the bench with injuries, apparently, but neither were listed as injured. But maybe Jed Buse comes in for one of Tuohy or Kolajashny. Yeah, I see the Swans winning this, 23 points or so.
I feel a strong possibility for Brody Grundy Brownlow votes.
Oh, I do too.
And if Grundy is in the top 2 on ground, this could get ugly.
There's a part of me that actually kind of likes how Tom Stewart could match up running around against someone like a Heaney or Warner, as good as those guys are. Is that crazy?
Perhaps a bit.
I think stopping both of them is highly unlikely. Stopping one, doable. Stopping both, ugh.
And yet you said you would probably take out Mark O'Connor rather than having him tag. You want to second guess that?
If he's in there, it better be as a tagger.
The second annual King's Birthday Eve game. They actually had greater attendance for this last year than they did for the King's Birthday game the next day. And I think this could smash head-to-head attendance records this year.
It was 60 people.
Ooh, wow, 60.
I think the hype for this one is going to be pretty incredible, even if you take out the fact that Barry McKay might have actually finally split into 2 people.
It's the Barry Multiverse.
I'm Barry!
The supposed McKay twins have never played against each other with 6 possible meetings before this. Was there a curse at North, or is there something more there?
But yes, this will be the 7th straight year the Bombers and Blues have met just once. This is Play the Music Sunday Night Football.
7:20 p.m. local time, 5:20 a.m. Eastern, 2:20 Pacific for Americans. Unfortunately on Fox Soccer Plus, but that's why we got Watch AFL.
The 8-3-1 Bombers against the 8-4 Blues, 2nd place versus 5th, the 56th consecutive time they will be playing at the MCG. They played just once last year. It was also round 13. It was a 34-point Essendon win.
The game was tight at halftime, and then Zach Merritt went forward and sparked a 6-goal Bombers run to open the third quarter. Essendon's back six was super clean. It was one of not dead Ben Hobbs' best games. Peter Wright kicked 5 straight. Essendon just kind of did everything they needed to do. Oh yeah, and Carlton kicking 6-16 did not help.
We know that Essendon will be coming into this game a bit shorthanded. Like I've said, Carlton have had their injury issues, but every team that plays Carlton gets hurt the week before. Mason Redmond's got a minor hamstring strain. He's out 1 to 2 weeks. We'll see about Talon Goldstein and Kyle Langford. If Goldstein's a no-go, do you just play Nick Bryan as the sole ruck, I guess? I mean, that's kind of what they did last week, right?
Kind of got to be the case, but if Goldstein is in, Bryan played well enough that I could see him maybe be part of the forward mix. It depends, I guess, if Nate Caddy is healthy as well. There's a whole kind of three-way thing that could be going on there to determine who's in and who's out. The ruck down is also present for the Blues because Mark Pitnet is getting over some finger surgery. The question is he needed? With Tom McKoning in strong enough form, I would say the Blues are better off trying to fix things elsewhere. Maybe give Jack Carroll a full game after doing well in the VFL. He was the late sub for
Orazio Fantasia
in the fourth quarter, but I want to see what he can do with a full game. Jesse Modlop also returned in the VFL this past week. Wasn't all that impactful, so maybe they'll try to ease him back in and have him return to the top flight after the bye.
I still think if Pitnet's there, you got to play him because when he's good, the team's good. They can survive less effective DeConing, but good Pitnet does a lot for them.
The Blues are 11.5-point favorites. I don't necessarily mind this.
I want to know if Essendon won last week, how much closer would this line be? I think losing last week really put a lot of doubt into people for the Bombers.
I think this could have been within a goal. Blues still favored, but within a goal.
Like what, 4.5, 5.5?
I was thinking 5.
Do they have special, like, holiday-themed concession items at King's birthday?
I have no idea, and considering the Republican sentiment in Australia, and a lot of it anyway, I wouldn't think so.
Because I was thinking it would be appropriate if, for King's birthday, they had Vienna sausages available at the concessions to honor the King's fingers.
That's pretty good. But if the King's birthday is actually about one person in Australia, in Victoria in particular, that person is Neale Danaher.
I love that this has been kind of the legacy of this holiday. And I just noticed altogether, Australians really get behind charitable causes, like to an incredible level. You know, you see it with the telethon and the fundraiser for the Children's Hospital on Good Friday. You see it with this. It's pretty amazing.
Well, this is going to be Big Freeze 10?
Yes. You know, you see everyone in attendance with a beanie. Is it like that just like nationwide?
You see it at games all over that week, so I would hope so.
It's weird. Neither of these teams are in the 8 right now, but I don't think there should be much pressure, at least on Collingwood. And I don't think there should be all that much on the Ds. Just, even if they were to lose this game, I wouldn't be concerned. I would just be concerned if they looked lifeless like they did last week.
I would be concerned if they lost. That would put them at 7-6 going into the bye with a super uncertain forward structure. I think it's a real cause for concern if they cannot bounce back and have, a tight loss is one thing. Even a moderate loss would be cause for concern.
I feel like unless they get beaten pretty comfortably, I don't think either team has to panic too much about form. And, I've been of the belief, it's between like second down to somewhere around 12th or 13th. There's a lot of parity. And so this game, like most games with parity, will come down to who takes advantage of their stretches where they're dominant. 2 very close meetings last year. Round 13, Melbourne overcame inaccuracy to win by 4. Jack Viney was aimed best on ground. And then Collingwood won the qualifying final by 7, despite losing the X score by 18 and getting nearly doubled in inside 50s. That was the game where Angus Brayshaw's career ended.
And that caused huge change in just tribunal interpretation leading into this season. And we've already seen some of the effects of that. I think Sam Darcy's case, coincidentally against Braden Maynard, was a real example of that. He'd have had a real case for himself in prior years, not now. It's strange, though, with that King's birthday game last year, the D's really didn't take advantage of a lot of their opportunities, kicking 8-18. But but did enough elsewhere on the ground to make up for it. The Pies are likely getting back Will Hoskin-Elliott and Reef McInnes from injuries suffered in round 10.
So who would come out? I mean, I feel like the
Ashton Ling.
Oh, yeah, that's one. But who would the other be? Because I feel like the weaker links right now are in defense with Charlie Dean and Will Parker.
Maybe let McInnes do more tall roving and take out Parker and move someone else to the sub role.
Possible.
I don't think there's any one clear answer here, and
Maybe Crampton?
Tall subs could work. Maybe you do something interesting and bring in Tao Jaff for a debut. He was an emergency for the first time this past round. If you're looking for a defensive solution, why not try him out?
On the D's side, Lockie Hunter hurt his calf again. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. Jacob Van Rooyen likely returns from his adductor injury. I guess you could just go Van Rooyen for Hunter and no other changes, but that seems not likely.
I guess that would really be backing Caleb Windsor to patrol the wing then, which is not something I mind, but I imagine they probably try Jack Billings or maybe bring in Bailey Laurie for more of an outside.
With how Charlie last week went, there's got to be more than one change. I would think, let's see, Daniel Turner after 6 touches probably comes out. Harrison Petty could be at risk. I think Harrison Petty's more at risk.
Yeah, it was Turner's first game back. I think Petty and Shane McAdam are actually quite at risk.
And maybe Taj Woden, just because he's kind of been this permanent sub.
He'll probably be the sub for the 9th time, knowing him.
If you're Simon Goodwin or D's list management,
These nuts. Got him.
Any change you've been kind of considering, you make using last week as the excuse for that.
Maybe this is where you bring Tom Fullerton in, the former basketballer.
Ooh, former basketballer.
Did you know he's a former basketballer?
I did, but did you?
Yes.
Maybe try Matt Jefferson after another 2 goals this past week. Your top pick from 2022 who you've yet to see at the top flight. Maybe Colton Tholstrup comes in as more of a pressure forward. Maybe this is finally when Ben Brown comes back in. He was an emergency last week, and I'd rather see him get another opportunity than throw out Harrison Petty again. Or maybe you just back in Tom McDonald for a full game forward. It's a weirder proposition considering you're without Jake Lever. But McDonald did well when swung forward last week. He did kick 2 goals.
I like Harrison Petty, but he should not be in there after his recent form.
Which way would you go?
I'd go Laurie. I'm out on Billings. Laurie and Van Rooyen for Hunter and Petty seem like the 2 most logical moves. I can't say I know enough about Jefferson to say much there.
I'd say maybe Tholstrup for McAdam is a move I'd be willing to make as well.
Also, flow.
Colton Tholstrup's flow?
Yes.
I mean, Ben Brown's getting his flow back too. That was still so weird to see him clean shaven. Okay, Ethan, what was weirder, seeing Ben Brown clean shaven or seeing Esava Radicolea shaven?
Esava, because it wasn't a conventional hairstyle at all. It was like half shaved, half buzz in between the 2. Collingwood favored by 2.5. I'm surprised it's not a little higher after last week, but I think it's fair. Maybe I'd push this like to 4.5 at most, but they are definitely the more shorthanded team. I could see Christian Petrarca just going off in this game.
If the Demons win, it's one of Petrarca, Viney, or Gone winning the Neale Danaher Trophy. I think there's a greater number of people who could win it for Collingwood.
I disagree, because it goes to Nick Dacos. Just for narrative's sake, it's always Nick Dacos.
I think there's a real chance Pat Lipinski could surprise people.
Hey. What about this being the Clayton Oliver bounce back game? He's kind of been there. I feel like there are opportunities with what the Pies are missing in the midfield.
Do you want to back him in enough to make him your main character?
No, but this is the segue to that, isn't it?
Who's your main character, Ethan?
I had something silly and I forgot it. I had something silly.
Was it the didgeridoo player or the timbale man?
No, it was... Actually, I'm going to go with an obvious pick. Nick Natanui, since he's one of the sliders.
He is one of the sliders. I believe Daisy Pierce is as well.
Yeah, I'm just going Nick Natanui.
What do you think he does? Aquaman?
I don't know.
I could really see Aquaman working with him because of his flow. I think Jason Momoa would dig it.
I'm going to have a silly pick as well. My silly main character pick this week. A player drinking something, a beverage that you wouldn't expect during a game in the spirit of Jason Gilby. Maybe paint thinner.
What?
Yeah, or more likely just drinking something normal but out of a funny container.
We have seen some milk being drunk lately by some people, including Damian Hardwick.
And, was it Damian Barron, I think? Maybe
Dwayne Russell, I know.
Yes, Dwayne Russell. Do you have a pick?
Ben King. It'll either be a success for Ben, and he will propel the Suns to their first away win of the year, or King will be noticeable for less savory reasons on the field.
Like something suspension worthy or just playing poorly?
Either or, I was thinking just playing poorly because he's been pretty damn accurate this year. It would almost be fitting to have like a role reversal or like a freak out when his twin is there.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode. We're on Twitter at Americans Footy. You know the drill. I'm at Castle Media. He's at Benjamin HK01. Brian's on Instagram at Cat Named Brian. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're important. Keep listening to us because you think we're important enough to devote some of your time to us, and I appreciate that.